What's going on, my Jets family? I want to thank you guys for tuning in to the Take Flight Spit and Fire podcast. You got me, like always, Harrison Glazer, but I'm excited. We got Adam B here from New York Sports Wicker Media. Had him on before. You guys probably seen him a couple of episodes back. We had him on. I've been on his show with him and Jeremy. They have an awesome show that they do on Jeremy's channel with Jets Chaos. It's always freaking awesome to talk with you, man. Really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me, Harrison. And I'd like to give Jeremy a little credit for letting me out of my cage for a few minutes. It's always nice when he allows me to do other things now. Now, Jeremy's escaping the heat in California right now. Apparently, San Francisco is a lot cooler than Sacramento is. So I guess I don't know. He had to avoid the heat. But yeah, just drove in from North Carolina back to Virginia. It was about a 3.5-hour drive. Walked through the door 10 minutes ago, went boom, let's go. I wouldn't miss this show for just about anything. Let's go.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you. And like you heard, that's dedication, guys. He just got in and he's here with us live to talk about the Jets. And I'm excited. I felt like this episode would be a good time to talk about Zach Wilson. Because, Zach Wilson may be returning week 1. I mean, we're going to get into that. We'll talk about him returning, toward like a little later in the episode. But he may be returning week 1, but he's definitely returning in those first few weeks. So first things, if you guys haven't, if you could please subscribe to the channel, that'd be greatly appreciated. You can do so by clicking on the logo in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Be greatly appreciated. But as you guys know, and Adam, you probably know as well on Twitter, I've always been a big fan of Zach Wilson. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about because, again, he's coming back. This is a big year for the kid, right? I mean, he's going into his second year now, right? All this talent, all this built around him, ready to succeed. I'm excited. Excuse me. So, yeah, man, just going back, just talking all about, all the things that I've always loved about Zach Wilson, going back to college, talking about that. And I'd love to hear what you, what you think as well. But he was always, going back to the process back in, when we thought Sam Darnold may not be the guy. You probably remember that whole thing with, is Sam Darnold the guy? Is he not the guy? I was one of the people that stayed on the Sam Darnold train a little longer than I probably should have. I'll be honest about that. But I was always a big Clemson fan. So it was easy for me to, like Trevor Lawrence. But Zach Wilson, man, he easily and quickly became my guy when I started really looking at other quarterbacks. Because you remember, for the longest time, it was just consensus overall pick. We were going to have the first pick. But then when that became in question, I remember a lot of people, when we talked about it, back years ago now, honestly, it was years ago, that a lot of people went back to Sam Darnold, but that didn't make sense to me. Like, if you felt it was time to move on, why would you not move on just because you can't have one guy? So that's when I started looking at other people, and I instantly fell in love with Zach Wilson. Like on Twitter, if you guys remember back, it was I think December of 2020. I started watching the kid, and I was like, I'm going to watch some film of him at BYU. I loved him, instantly just fell in love with him. And I'd love to hear what you think, your first impressions. But one of the first things that I really loved that jumped off with Zach Wilson, and I talked about it nonstop, was his pocket awareness. His awareness in the pocket. I, at the time, and you might agree, I was nervous. Saying anything, that anyone was better than Trevor Lawrence about anything, people were ready to kill you. So I was nervous to make that statement because that's everyone's coming after you at that point. But I honestly felt in that aspect, Zach Wilson was better. His ability in the pocket to stand, to see the defensive guys coming in. And I noticed in a lot of blitzes, when the defensive ends would come in, it was almost instantaneous, his ability to sense the pressure, move in the pocket. Ironically, it's what a lot of people liked about Strepler, which is funny. But man, that pocket awareness, especially the mobility, his anticipation back there, that was one thing that I really loved about him in the beginning. And I'd, love to hear what you think, about that and your first impressions of when you first started looking at Zach.
I got to be honest. I am not the biggest watcher of college football. I never went to a school that had football. It's never been something I've been too huge about. I'll start paying attention come the bowl games, and that is basically about it. And now, over the last couple of years, I've started watching those games if there's a potential player who the Jets could make, where it might make sense. But you really only do that for a quarterback. It's you're going to watch, or you might watch, say, Georgia, where you have all these potential first-round picks coming out when the Jets had their litany of picks going into the draft this year. It made sense at that point. But for me, it always felt like it was all about Trevor Lawrence. It was Trevor and his backup band. It was like Trevor Lawrence was Freddie Mercury, and then you had the rest of the backup band. It's the average music fan doesn't know the rest of the guys in Queen, but yeah, I mean, we could go there, but with Trevor Lawrence, it felt like he was the only one worth taking. And to me, I was like, it's just too obvious if it goes this way, because how often do these draft classes with quarterbacks, how often does it work out exactly the way the pundits think it's going to? Whether it's the draft selection, whether it's who works out and who doesn't work out, I am of the belief that a large part of a quarterback's success depends on the team that they go to. Does the organization have a clue what they're doing? And we'll get into that in a little bit more in a moment. But the first time I think I really paid attention to him was at his pro day. I watched a little bit of the one bowl game. I think it was a replay because that bowl game happened so early on.
Yeah, I think you know what you're talking about. Yeah,
it was so quick. I'm like, it's over? Oh, okay, great. I'll watch the replay. But for me, I felt when I watched Zach Wilson, the first thing that stuck out to me was his instincts. And you can't coach instincts. It's like and this goes back to the pocket awareness that you just talked about, right? Where he seemed to know where the pressure was coming from, and he seemed to have that quickness, that mobility, that agility to move out of it. There are fast guys, there are quick guys. Zach Wilson is quick. He may not be able to win. He may not have the fastest 40 time that you'll ever see in your life, but he knows seemingly how to escape the pocket and extend plays. And now that we have some playmakers who can really make a difference on this roster, multiple ones, that is only going to play into Zach Wilson's favor. So, yeah, for me, the instincts were the first thing that stuck out when I watched him. I kind of expected arm strength. I mean, most quarterbacks, it feels like just about every quarterback who has a first-round grade on him, arm strength. Well, I sure hope they have some arm strength. But what about their accuracy? What about their instincts? What about their ability to extend plays? How do they read the defense? All those go into making a good quarterback. But yeah, it was the mobility for me and the quickness that stuck out for me about Zach Wilson.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And, mainly with me, that was the biggest thing. And it's crazy, like you were mentioning, a lot of people on the Trevor, wagon at the time, thinking back to it, you said before, draft classes never go how you expect they're going to go. And kind of same thing back in 2018, right? Like I remember back, before we took a quarterback in 2018, all the talk was that Sam Darnold was going to be the consensus first overall guy. So I wasn't even really looking at him because it was kind of like consensus that he wasn't going to be there. So I was looking at the other guys and I really liked Baker. Like I ironically fell in love with the kid and I was like, loved his attitude, loved the personality he brought, the way players migrated to him and wanted to play with him. But yeah, no, exact same thing. You never exactly know, how a draft class is going to pan out. But man, with Zach Wilson, it blew me away because there's specific things. And I talked about it, on my show when I first started doing this, that everyone, looks at different things. Like every analyst, like I talk about, I do my own boards and people over the years always been, oh, your board looks different than others. Well, yeah, I mean, you look at different things. Like if it was the same as everyone else, it would just be a copy of it. So with quarterback, there was always things I looked at that jumped out to me that I've always looked for. And I saw that in Zach, like the things I specifically look for, like it was just box check. And again, things like that pocket awareness, like even more than Trevor, like totally became my guy. But when I knew, that's when I was going to transition to that, like when I knew. And I think I joked about this as well, was ironically that Coastal Carolina game, because people always talked, about how Zach Wilson had a great offensive line in college. So you never really saw him under that much pressure. And people crapped on him. That's what I thought was funny. Like people crapped on him in that Coastal game. Like after the game, everyone was like going after Zach, like, oh, he was under the pressure the whole game. And my question was, well, if you're evaluating the quarterback, how did you not love that game? Like that was the game where it's like, okay, let's see Zach under pressure. He was under constant pressure. In that Coastal game, he was under constant pressure and he was making great throws, great reads, and the anticipation was just unbelievable. I loved his reads. I loved the throws he was making. It was just absolutely excellent. And that was when I knew, like, okay, like this is the kid I want. Like this is the kid I hope we draft. Like this is the kid I hope we get. And I was just over the moon when we drafted him. But
yeah, he made Dax Milne look good. To the point where Dax Milne was actually a draftable player who now will be known for other things, and he will live in infamy for the rest of his career. I use that loosely.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Definitely true. Interesting situation, obviously, to say the least. But then, you see signs of it. It's like the biggest thing for me was obviously the pocket. Like you said, you didn't really follow him as much in college. Like this was the kid I wanted. But his rookie season, man, I thought it was much better than so many people gave him credit for. Like people were like, okay, it wasn't a great rookie year. And yeah, I mean, yeah, he didn't come out and throw 3,000 yards and 30-something touchdowns. but he progressed. He looked better. Like, and I point out, like here in his rookie season before he got hurt, Zach Wilson had 4 total touchdowns on the year and 9 interceptions. And then when he came back from his injury the rest of the year, totally flipped it. He had 7 total touchdowns and 2 interceptions. And you were watching, obviously, beginning of the year, GVR was in there. That offensive line was a train wreck. Like those first 3 weeks, I was pissed. Like, I don't know if you guys remember on Twitter, I was yelling. Like, I was like, get a better offensive lineman in there or get Zach the hell out of there because he's going to die. Like, it was all, I was so pissed. It was crazy. And we all know, as you mentioned, talent on the team, talent means everything, right? We've seen from so many GMs in the past fail to surround our quarterbacks with talent. We watched even Mark Sanchez, who was surrounded with talent. They take the talent away from him and go, what happened? I don't quite understand. It's like, it's crazy. So I agree with you, man. I think this is a really, really talented team. And I think he's progressing, showing the right things, showing his talent. And again, the things that you want in a quarterback, like, everyone's going to develop differently, but I feel like the way I look at it is there's like a moldable piece, like a clay almost, but there's a foundation you want. All those things that you would want to see in a young quarterback, I feel like I see in Zach Wilson.
And there's no formula on how to do this. If there was, I mean, this is not a science. There is no exact way to determine who's going to be a successful NFL player, and quarterback is the hardest position of all because there's so much that goes into it.
If you were, you'd be like a billionaire. You'd be like the richest person in the world.
Bro, I wouldn't be here with you right now. That's for sure.
I know, yeah.
I'd be on my own island.
GMs would be showing up from around the nation. Oh, wise Adam, please tell me the move.
I haven't called a lot of things. I don't know about wise, but we'll go with it for the time being. But for me, what the biggest thing, like, and I can understand people not taking some shots at Zach, like criticizing what will he be, what is his future. But there have just been some criticisms that I simply can't take. Probably the biggest one of all people has been Mike Tannenbaum. When he went on ESPN, he went on Mike Greenberg's show, and Greenberg asked him, like, how do you really feel about it's like, can Zach Wilson be the quarterback? And, up until that show, he'd been on about 30, 40 minutes. Is like, I'm excited about Greeny. I'm excited about the process. I'm excited about this process and that process. And he's talking, with different teams, things that he's kind of excited about. Hey, Jets mess. And he's talking about all these things. But then Greenberg asks him, is Zach Wilson the guy for the Jets? His response, no. A flat out no. No hesitation.
Like you can know now. Like now is a time where you can make that assessment.
But let me get to the rationale on why he did this and why he said it. I'm like, I can't wait to hear this. Is it going to be about the short arm passing? Is it going to be about losing Mekhi Becton? What is it going to be about? Is it that the BYU? Is it the competition aspect? He said he finished the last in the NFL among qualified quarterbacks in completion percentage. Nothing else. He said, if you can't complete your passes, then you're not going to go very far, no matter how good of an offseason they had. I'm like, okay, Mike, let's break this down a little bit. Let's keep in mind he had an average of about 2.1 seconds to throw the average pass. That's number one. He had a 12% drop rate. Now, maybe part of that is putting touch on the ball properly. Maybe his passes were coming a little bit harder than Joe Flacco's. Maybe that has something to do with it. But between Ty Johnson, the tight ends, as much as I defend Corey Davis, he had his share of drops. Elijah Moore even dropped a pass or two. A 12% drop rate is just alarming. And that took down the completion percentage substantially. So I think Mike Tannenbaum is getting this from the Rex Ryan school. Rex believed that if you had, rushing attempts plus completed passes, if that was over X, if that was a certain number, you had this much % of a chance to win. But you also but it has to go deeper than that. I feel like that's simplifying it too much. And I can't believe I've been on the show like 10 minutes. I'm already taking a shot at both Rex Ryan and Corey Davis. Those who know me knows it's just shocking. But it's more than just completing the passes. And I feel like Tannenbaum had to go deeper. If you look at the improvement, you noticed how he was commanding the offense. He was not as focused on one receiver as he was in the beginning of the year. And I think that was important, how to read defenses, look off these safeties so that he is not predictable where he's going with the ball. That, I think, is one of the biggest things that Zach Wilson can improve on. And I think it's what I need to see in terms of a specific quarterback trait. not focusing on one receiver will go a long way to making this offense thrive the way that we want it to.
And that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. I brought that up as one of my.
Oh, did I jump the page on you?
No. You're all good. You're all good. I'm glad you brought it up. I'm just
All
trying.
right.
I have a bunch of quotes I wanted to, excuse me, to bring up with Zach Wilson, and that was actually one of them. Robert Saleh was earlier in the offseason. Him and Michael LaFleur were echoing the same things. Can't find the exact tab now, but basically the sentiment was that Zach's biggest problem they felt were his eye and feet. That his eyes and feet weren't in sync with each other. And because of that, he was making some bad reads. And like you mentioned, progressions and things like that. But they felt like that was something easily fixable. And that was something, we saw in his rookie year. And that was another interesting take as well. We saw all of a sudden, like halfway through the season, his accuracy is starting to like drop off. Like he's missing easy throws that he was making, almost like it felt like to me, like, and I don't want to say it because you never want to say it. It's like when you see a picture with it, you never want to say it, but it kind of felt like the yips is what it felt like he's doing like things that he used to be able to do so easily, he's not able to do. But what I thought was crazy about was that you saw people on like social media going, well, Zach Wilson has no throw accuracy. Clearly
Right.
has no throw accuracy. And it's like, wait a minute, time out. Did you just start watching Zach Wilson? Because if you've been watching him, that's never been his issue. Clearly has never been his problem. So if all of a sudden this is happening, it's got to be something else. And I think it's, again, like you're saying, it takes time. Not everyone, and I've mentioned it before, everyone looks at Patrick Mahomes as, like the standard, but it's not. It's the exception. Like Patrick Mahomes is the exception to the rule. Most guys don't come in. It takes time. It takes a year or so. It takes time to, get better, to understand an NFL system, to realize. But you want to make sure you're learning from those mistakes. You're getting better.
And
And
Mahomes didn't play as a rookie anyway. Let's keep that in mind. He played the second season. That's a
no,
factor. I wonder if Wilson would have been better off sitting his rookie year. There's no way to determine that. But I do wonder if
he would have had someone to sit behind. That's the problem. Like
exactly.
that, exactly. Like you can't sit Zach, and it's like, who's the quarterback? You know what I mean? He's got to.
Well, we didn't have Chris Streveler at the time. I mean, had we, of course, he would have been the absolute perfect solution, as we all know.
Yeah, and I'm not against, throwing into the fire. I think, that works to an extent. Obviously, you don't want, it's like offensive linemen. You don't want to kill the player's confidence, but they have to learn the game. They have to learn, how it looks. But clearly there's an aspect you see on the side as well. And we saw that with Zach. Because, again, like we were saying, or like it says here with the stat, beginning of the season struggled when he took a little time off, sort of a little differently, talked to Joe. Remember, he said he talked to Joe, he talked to Mike, he spoke to them the way they saw it, and he came out and played a lot better. And, you mentioned the stats before. I think it's just the way you look at it, the way for stats you look for. And this was a big one that I found. So you could find tons of negative stacks on Zach Wilson because, it was a rookie season. But what about this one? What about the fact that in Zach's rookie season in the red zone, he threw 6 touchdowns and no interceptions? Like, that doesn't get enough credit for a rookie quarterback to make those assessments, to look good in the red zone. To be like, okay, here you need to dial it down. Less mistakes are more important, right? It's statistical basic math. If you make mistakes in the red zone, you can't win. That's just how it works. So that's awesome for a rookie. And so, like we said, the numbers, not great, got better. He showed progress in the things that matter. And if you look at that, then you could be excited. But like you said, you could easily just look at the numbers and spin it however you want. But it's important, like you see here, you could find the right numbers, like these red zone numbers.
Not to put you on the spot, these 6 touchdowns, do we know who they went to?
I'd have to look them up. I found it through, I think it's a Pro Football Reference, I believe. I'm big with stats. I like to dig.
I've never seen that on PFR.
I like to go, and that's the thing. I like to go into the glossary and like change things up, and it's look at, and that's what it is. I could find certain stats a different way, and I just found that one. I was just looking at things. I was comparing stuff, and I was like, oh wow. So I don't know exactly who it was to, but I do know for a fact in the red zone that he had 6 touchdowns and no picks.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I use PFR extensively when I do the trivia, but it feels like I'm more well-versed on the history than I am the present sometimes. But,
yeah, and it takes a little messing around with, but yeah, I like to, sometimes I'll mess around with the numbers. I like to see where the Jets lie.
Well,
and sometimes you find something interesting.
Well, then you got to subscribe to it, and you got to got to up your level a little bit, and then they'll be like, oh, we have all this other information for you. But that is very encouraging. That is super encouraging, because think about that. It's not like he had a go-to tight end. I didn't exactly see Travis Kelce on the roster, or like Bicycle
Tyler Croft. Like, I really, I was hoping, man, that he was going to do something. But
I like Croft, but he did catch 1 touchdown. But no, injuries have been an issue for him for a while. especially with his back. In fact, I think it was San Francisco who signed him, and then they cut him. I don't think Croft even has a job right now. But that was a player. It was like, oh boy, if everything goes well with him, it could work out really well. But outside of that, who are we talking about? Ryan Griffin, Dan Brown. I believe there's one. I believe there's one other one that I've been trying to push out of my memory. But it is intriguing. I wonder who the go-to red zone target is going to be, because you only have so much height here, and typically with that red zone, you want that fade. You know, a lot of times you see these jump balls, you see the fades going to the back. But I gotta say, I wouldn't mind seeing a few screens, even in that spot. You know, we got screened to death last season. Maybe with some of the new assets we have, with Brees, with Garrett, even Ty Conklin, even a tight end screen.
I was
Why
just
not
about to
get a
say,
little
I didn't
bit
want to
creative?
interrupt you, but I was thinking it. If you watch
Good
the
work.
Vikings, no, bro, if you watch the Vikings, there were some really nice Tyler Conklin screenplays.
He's
really
almost
nice.
like an H-back. He's not an H-back, but he's like an H-back meets a tight end and had a baby, and out pop Ty Conklin.
Yeah, he's almost it's almost like an old school fullback with really good receiving ability.
And really good beard
My
game,
babe.
both of those.
And really good beard game. Yes, yes. I want him and Green Bean just next to each other chatting. Just those beards, just beautiful.
Does Revis still have his beard? I don't know. I don't know if he still has the same old beard, but if I was him, I'd probably trim it for the Hall of Fame induction this next year. But you got to look good, because that Hall of Fame bust, if you have the long beard coming down looking like Santa Claus, that's going to look kind of crazy.
That's true. Yeah, they're making I mean, I guess you can opt to have them make it shorter, but I guess that's an interesting point. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Having a Santa Claus beard on the bust. That's funny. I never even thought of it that way. That's really funny. Could you imagine like that day showing up with I don't know, you get you got like a scar on your face or something, like you did something stupid the week before. Now you got me thinking about all this crazy stuff. Like someone's got a bust with they're half their eyelash miss.
Dude, so back when I was living in Chicago, I was in Chicago for 20 years. I went to both of the draft parties that they had in Chicago. That was when we drafted, I think, Adams in May, and we drafted Leonard Williams. I was at both of those drafts, because I remember as soon as we drafted Marcus May, I screamed out loud right on the LaSalle Bridge in Chicago, "We drafted 2 safeties in a row!" I screamed it out loud, and we couldn't even hear. But anyway, they had the whole combine. You could run the 40. You could do the shuttle drill, all this stuff, the high jump. But one of the coolest features they had was you could create your own Hall of Fame bust. It was digital, but they would literally scan. They had the scan thing, like you're at the dentist. They do the X-rays and it goes around your head like this. They did that with me, and I had a Nick Mangold jersey on. So you got the top of the 7, the 4 of the Jets, and you got me kind of bronzed. It was rather horrifying to see. I felt like the girl who died at the beginning of Goldfinger, the old James Bond movie, Jill Masterson. I looked like her. I looked like her just like I was painted gold paint. So, oh my gosh. So they actually have that where you could see yourself how you would look like. And I can only imagine Green Bean with the beard coming down.
Maybe one day maybe
Oh
we'll make a Jets YouTube Hall of Fame, and we'll bust them. We'll get him a bust.
Yeah. Jeremy's head, I don't know if it would fit. It would fit inside.
Oh, that's too funny, man. But shout out to all you guys in the chat. I appreciate your comments. Please, and let us know what you're thinking. I meant to mention that earlier as well. Don't know if I did, but I'd love to know what you guys are thinking. If you guys, what you liked about Zach Wilson when you first watched him play. If he was a guy you really like, what you liked about him in his rookie year. So shout out to It's Snoopy points out Zach Wilson had some of the most pressures of all second year, year 2 QBs. If you go back to his rookie year, man, back to that, he was pressured a lot. And part of it led to that injury where a lot of people felt like that was a late hit. I mean, it wasn't a great hit that was put on him. He winds up getting hurt. Like we said, came back better. But yeah, he was pressured a lot. This offensive line, man, I think a lot of people don't appreciate who Dwayne Brown is. And I kind of put that on Twitter the other day. I feel like the best way to think about it, like you mentioned with Canton Simple, Dwayne Brown, whenever he chooses to retire, whenever that is, there's a gold jacket waiting for him. PFF has said he's one of the best tackles to ever play in the PFF era. That's who Dwayne Brown is. So you got, Lakin next to him, a Pro Bowler, right, in the same system. Connor, who was good last year with good guard play around him. AV2, I think, is going to be a Pro Bowler. I really do. He's going to be excellent this year. Fant, man, this is a really good offensive line. And like Salah pointed out, the biggest issue is just they didn't get to jive together. Like they were hurt a little bit or they weren't all on the field together. Like offensive line is all about timing. Like I joke, I think I was on with you guys where I joked about I tried to play offensive line and I just sucked at it. Timing is everything. It's literally everything. So they need to be together to work on that. So I really do feel that, when the timing gets down, this offensive line is going to be a lot better. And that's going to be a major contributor on top of all these better weapons he has.
Yeah, and going against the Ravens in Week 1, I expect quite a bit of blitzing. I'm actually glad Flacco is playing this game for that one reason, because I am concerned about the offensive line at the beginning of the year. Only one player is playing the same position on the Jets that they played last year, and that's Connor McGovern, a player who I would say about a third of the Jets fan base can't wait to get out of here. It feels like Connor McGovern is about the most polarizing Jet. Right. He's about as polarizing a Jet as I think there is on the roster right now. Maybe him and Denzel Mims. I think those are 1 and 2. Take your pick. But
what's interesting with McGovern, I mean, what's interesting with McGovern though is if he has good guard play around him, which he should have this year, he could have another good year, and then he'd have 2 good years in a row.
The analogy that I've heard, though, with the and McGovern is, put it this way, if he's the weak link on your offensive line, fine. And certain times with the Jets, he's been our best offensive lineman. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. That is the truth. But how will George Fant adjust to right tackle? We don't know. I mean, from what people say, it's like if you're left-handed and all of a sudden you're trying to do everything right-handed, it goes completely against your instincts. The hope I have, there's two parts of hope that I have for this game. Number one, you have very good tight ends in terms of their blocking ability. Conklin can block. Rucker can block. CJ can block when he needs to. Okay, you have that going for you. I'm very disappointed Nick Bawden will miss the season. I think that will put Conklin and Rucker, I could see them lining up at fullback now and then this season. And I think Mike LaFleur will try that, and you will see one of those two players play quite a bit of fullback. I could see some swing passes to the fullback, either Rucker or Conklin. I could see that. That gives me encouragement. But I like that Flacco is somewhat familiar with this defense. I know Wink Martindale is not there anymore, but the new Ravens defensive coordinator was there for 5 years. He was there from 2015 to 2020 before he became Michigan's defensive coordinator. Now he's back as the Ravens defensive coordinator. So I hope they have Flacco line up in shotgun a couple of times. I want to give him a chance, because if these receivers can get open the way that they should, then Flacco can hit that deep pass. We know he can still throw a very good deep ball. But the offensive line and these receivers have to give him a chance to do that. He's not going to do it on his own. They have to enable Flacco. That is the key.
Well, I think that's a really, I think that's a really good point, because Joe Flacco, and I've said it myself, one thing he's still a really good quarterback. People don't give the guy credit. He's still a very good quarterback, but one of his best traits is his deep ball. He throws an outstanding deep ball. I mentioned it with Elijah Moore last year. That breakout game Elijah Moore had, where he had that huge game, was with Joe Flacco. It was really, hitting him in stride. So, yeah, man, I think, the offensive line playing really well could definitely open some stuff up. And Moore, a guy that can get open. Garrett Wilson, a guy that can get open. Corey Davis, Berrios, these are all guys that can get open. And we haven't even mentioned the tight end. So I'm excited about, man. But shout out to Josh, because he makes a really good point. Zach will be fine, no doubt. What do people expect in a rookie season with rookie everything around him? A big point of that is a rookie head coach and a rookie OC, right? Like I remember I mentioned with Mean Green Bean, we were on earlier last year's season. We had an interesting conversation of, maybe Mike LaFleur isn't the guy, because at that time the offense was struggling. They weren't performing. They were struggling. Everything wasn't looking that good. So we had a question of what that could be, and if that, God forbid is the case, what it could do to Zach Wilson and his development. So clearly that's proven. Obviously, Mike LaFleur's look great. The answer is obviously keep him in the booth, right? You keep him in the booth, you lock the door. If he tries to come on the field, you trick him somehow so he goes back in the booth. Just leave him up there. Obviously, booth LaFleur is where it's at. But, man, I mean, it started to come on as the season went on, and so did the team. It's a young team. And same right now, right? I mean, we got Garrett Wilson, a young receiver that's added to the mix. So I'm excited, man. I really am excited about this second-year jump, and I think, the offensive line will play a major aspect to it.
Yeah, how long they take. I want to also point out a comment from NY Jets fan 4. We can't throw the deep ball against this secondary. Here's what I'm hoping. Two things. I hope, number one, Marcus Peters is on Elijah Moore. Peters likes to set the pace, and I think that Moore, with his route running ability, can beat Peters a time or two during this game. I'm hoping that that's the matchup that we have. I don't want Peters against Corey Davis. I don't think that matchup would work. But you know what? Let's test Kyle Hamilton. Let's see if the all-world safety, who is going to make everybody forget about Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu, let's see if he can actually cover. Let's run right at Kyle Hamilton and make him cover.
Yeah, what could be interesting is Kyle Hamilton might wind up on a guy like Conklin, which could be really interesting. That would be fun to watch. That would be a fun matchup, and I think Conklin is big enough, strong enough man. He can take advantage of that matchup.
I think that's the best way to do it. I think this is not a great match for the Jets week 1 because of the Ravens' stability that they do have. When your top 3 cornerbacks are Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, and Kyle Fuller, that's a pretty good way to go. So at that point, you have to start attacking the middle of the field more, and that's where Uzomah comes in. That's where Conklin comes in. That's where Berrios comes in. They're big. These cornerbacks are physical, but maybe Braxton Berrios, send him on a crossing route over the middle of the field. I think that could work against the Ravens. I think that would be a very good way to go. So, yeah, that is I think one good way to go about it. I don't know how big of a game Corey Davis would have, because with the Ravens having big physical man covers, that is not the kind of matchup where Davis would succeed. I want him where he could use his size against smaller corners. Wilson as a rookie, I think this would be tough. I think Elijah Moore. If the Jets are going to have a big performance from a wide receiver, I think this might be surprising. But I'm going to go Elijah Moore 1, but Braxton Berrios number 2.
Interesting, yeah, and it's very interesting, to see what's going to happen in the game. I'm going to pivot a little back to that toward the end. I want to talk more about will Zach Wilson return week 1, and definitely we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But one thing I do want to bring up is something you brought up a little earlier in the show, like it was like 10 minutes back or so, or issue. You brought up that competition argument, and I wanted to mention that and talk about that because when everyone brought that up back in college, I don't know if it was just me, but I was like, does everyone not realize that this argument is actually working for Zach and against everybody else? Everyone was looking at it the wrong way. Everyone's like, the competition isn't there. They're not playing all these top schools. But think of it a different way. Clemson, if Trevor Lawrence wasn't there, they'd still be one of the best programs. Ohio State, if Justin Fields wasn't there, they would still be one of the best programs. The competition argument is relative. That program has some of the best. I joked about with Mac Jones, why I felt.
Thank you. Yeah, I was waiting for you to say Mac Jones.
I made a big statement that I didn't not like him, but I felt like it was impossible for me to gauge him in the simple way that he was playing with more talent than freaking Sam Darnold was at the NFL level. And that's what was crazy. He had more first-round talent wide receivers than we had, that Sam was working with. So it was impossible to gauge. So these are all great programs regardless of these quarterbacks. And I did a whole thing with Ohio State where I even joked where I felt bad that I was doing it, but I sat and I watched their film for a little while, and I started to dissect the system because I've realized this talking with people that are big college football people. Why do these schools stay great, right? It's the coaching, but why do they stay top? Because they have a system in place that's kind of almost foolproof. They have backups and fail-safes built in, and I made a whole thing about this where I talked about with Justin Fields where it gives an illusion of going through progression. So the system would have built in where if this receiver isn't open, you look for this tight end here, or you cut this way. And it would look like the quarterback is making that decision himself. And you'll be like, wow, that's a great thing. But his brain's actually off. They've made it so that he doesn't have to think. It's all built into the progressions of the system. And I noticed that because I started to see trends. I would see it repeat in this situation, this would happen. Or in this situation, they would do this or go that way. So I thought that was an interesting thing again, which is these systems are so great. They're going to be great regardless. Trevor Lawrence was good there, but even if he wasn't there, Clemson would be great. Zach took BYU, a system that wasn't great, a team that wasn't ranked, and elevated them to that level. So that's why I didn't get why everyone's like, how do you not get that you're making this argument for Zach and against these guys?
And the other thing is, first of all, quick hellos to the great Michael Lando. See him a lot in the different chats. Good to see him. And Tom Bon Jovi. I feel like I haven't seen Tom in a while. Tom, good to see you too, man. Yeah, glad you guys are here. But you know what Zach's quarterback rating was in 2020, his senior year? I didn't even know you could have a quarterback rating this high. 196.4. I mean, 33 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Let's see, 247 completions on 336 attempts, 73.5. Are you going to tell me that Zach Wilson's suddenly forgot how to complete a pass in 1 year? That he went from a 74 completion percentage to like a 55 or whatever it was last year?
Thank you. Like, I didn't understand that. People there's a huge thing on social media. Everyone's like, Zach Wilson can't throw the ball. And I was like I mentioned before, I was like, is this the first time you're watching him play?
And the other thing, and for those who want to jump on the preseason game for that first drive, yes, it was ugly. But you know what a lot of coaches say? We get more out of the joint practices than we do the preseason games themselves. You know, Robert Saleh has said that. I think Bill Parcells even. I don't know if Parcells. I don't know if they had it back then. I think maybe they did in Dallas when he was coaching. But they get more out of those because they can simulate conditions a little bit more. And to me, that means something because the Jets tore the Falcons up. Tore them up in those practices. They dominated.
That was beautiful.
They beat the Giants up also. They beat the Falcons came out like that was their freaking Super Bowl. That was their Super Bowl, was that preseason game against the Jets. The Jets played their backups. The Falcons played their starters well into the second quarter. You know, and you can't even predict these things anymore. You used to know, okay, first preseason game, second preseason game. The third preseason game, we'll see the guys, and the fourth game is for the scrubs. Now you don't really know. It's harder than ever to gauge players in a preseason game because the level of competition has become so imbalanced because the ones play the twos and the threes play the nines and whatever the hell else is on the field at the time. I think we pulled out a couple of popcorn vendors from the stands to play safety at the end of the game, if I'm not mistaken. So if you want to make this about one preseason drive, remember, you can't the preseason is about as worthy a judgment as a regular practice. It's not valid. It's just not.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. So, you know, we take it all, right? We take all those things you mentioned, you know, that I loved about Zach, you know, why I thought I wanted this kid. I really wanted him as a quarterback. Loved about him in his rookie year. Excuse me. We talked about the progression he made, the stats again, you know, how, you know, you can look at it any way, right? You can spin it any way, but you look at some numbers, they're very good. They're very promising. And one of the things that really did it for me, what kind of sealed it, was the comments made about Zach Wilson. The comments made from his coaches and his fellow teammates. And I have a bunch of them. I definitely wanted to share some of them. One was one from CJ Mosley that was earlier in the process back in May. As you remember, everyone couldn't help talking about it, Zach Wilson looking beefy, right? Like that was the thing. Like Zach looks beefy. He looks bigger, which is important. Like we joke about it, but it shows dedication to the craft. Like you remember, it was one of the reasons I and many called out Mekhi Becton. Right at the time, like, okay, we get you want to be the guy, but you need to show that, right? Like you've come in heavier, okay, lose weight, right? Show, you know, that you can, your dedication to the craft. And he did. And that's what was so devastating. You know, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole because he was looking better and all that. But with Zach coming in stronger shows that dedication to the craft, that he's working to better his body, to be better to play at the NFL level. And he even talked about, you know, that being so he could take more hits because that was unfortunately something that he had to do a lot last year. But CJ Mosley points out, you know, that he put on some weight, looks ready to go. But it's the things they say, like, about what he does. Like, I listen to what they say about him, and that's what does it for me. Like it talks about how he's been doing things the right way. We don't have to worry about him not being prepared. He said he spends countless hours in the film room and after work trying to get better on one little thing. And I want to focus on that one because that's not the first time someone said that. Like Robert Saleh reiterated the same thing, that in a way he said that he's a perfectionist. Like he'll want to do the play over to see what he did wrong and where he made the mistake, or try something different to see if it would look different. So I love that. If you remember in his rookie year, another thing that, you know, Robert Saleh, they always kept talking about was how he was always learning, right? Everyone kept talking about his intelligence, that he was always, you know, he was always learning. Like that was what they always kept saying, that he was always learning. He was always getting better. He was always progressing. And he was always trying to, like, they just say, you know, do one thing better, like get one thing right. And, you know, you mentioned it, like, you know, just other quotes as well. Robert Saleh said, you know, like we mentioned earlier, that one of the biggest reasons that Zach's gotten better, like you mentioned earlier, for his improved accuracy was his tempo and his footwork. He added that him having a better pocket presence, keeping his eyes focused and tying his feet to everything, like we mentioned before, was giving him better footwork, better accuracy, and working on these things and getting better. Like we saw earlier in the process, there's so many. Back in May, Robert Saleh even said Zach Wilson had a really good early command of created the offense. And again, you'll notice I'm saying the same things. He's saying there's the little things that he's doing. He's not a rookie anymore. He's being more vocal. He's much further ahead. It's these constant things being reiterated, by different people. CJ Mosley, whoever asks, they're always saying the same thing, where it's either that he's learning and getting better, he's focusing on the little things. And I've compared it to, again, obviously I'm not saying he's Tom Brady. Let's make that clear.
Zach doesn't cheat. No. Zach's not a cheater. So
I love that.
Let's be clear on that. Not
Love
Brady. No, I don't want that.
I love that. But the concept of, that perfectionist, you know what I mean? Like doing something 1,000 times over, wanting to get it right, always working harder, being first when they're last one to leave. Like you're hearing all the things that you want to hear, that the dedication is there, the mentality is there, the learning, everything is there. It just needs to happen. And like you mentioned before, the talent, if you want it to happen, you have to allow him to make it happen. And you see that now with the talent they put around him.
And he got better in high school, better in college. The numbers lay that out. I actually got another quote for you that I found. I was looking up some quotes on Wilson. This is from, and I love this. You're going to love the source on this one. Quote from an NFC director on BYU quarterback Zach Wilson. An NFC director. I think I have an idea what team in the NFC this was. This was from Christmas Eve of 2020. Okay. Zach Wilson has character concerns. Rich kid who is an entitled brat. It gets better. Uncle owns JetBlue, like that's a sin. Parents are a pain, not a leader, selfish, and he's a know-it-all. One day later, his head coach, Blair Peterson, says, this quote is an absolute joke and the furthest thing from the truth. Not only is Zach Wilson one of the most dedicated and toughest players I've ever been around, you won't find a better teammate, leader, or person than Zach Wilson on or off the field. I guarantee you that NFC director was the San Francisco 49ers, and they were praying that the Jets would not take him. I think they were just trying to put a little smear campaign out on Zachary Capono Wilson.
Oh, Adam, I can guarantee you are 100% correct. Because as you mentioned, that and the draft process, that was my guys. I was really into Zach, following him through the whole process. And I pointed that out almost immediately the next day. Right when that crazy story came forward, literally the next day, his teammates are coming forward saying, this is absolutely insane. It's not even close to true. He's a leader. He's a great guy. Everything they're saying is wrong, like not even close. His coaches were reiterating the same thing. But all that stuck in people's head was that stupid quote. And so many people forgot that the next day they came forward, to the point where even some people came out. I remember it was like a month or two later. They're like, well, if it's not true, why hasn't Zach come forward and said something? And that's when I had to be like,
it's not his responsibility to.
Exactly. That's
why does he have to do that? That's not on him.
No, and that's where, yeah.
And you got to love Anonymous. Anonymous has given us some of the greatest quotes of all time. Some of the best scouting reports came from Anonymous, who I believe lives in parts unknown. I think that's where I think Anonymous might be the mayor of parts unknown.
It's anonymous. That's the point. You can say whatever you want.
Those of us old school wrestling fans
say whatever you want with impunity. Like just make something up.
You
got to love that. You see it on Twitter all the time, right? Some guy says something per source.
The same one that said Dan Marino had a drug problem, probably back in the '83 draft. It was probably the same guy.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. But no, like it was literally like all these people saying, why'd he come forward? Well, literally the mark of a leader is that he doesn't have to come forward. Everybody else did for him in less than a 24-hour period. Like I was like, wait a minute, like hold on. In like less than a day, everyone came forward and they were like, this is insane. It was reiterated, like they were almost all saying like the same thing. This is crazy. It's so untrue. And yeah, I'm totally convinced because we've seen this throughout the years, right? Where a team falls in love with a guy. So they're like a witch with a cauldron. They're like, haha, I'm going to concoct a spell where I'm going to make something up and maybe I can get him to fall. Like we see this shit all the time. I think
you can bet on Vegas. It's like, 3 days before, who's going to have the new story come out about their previous marijuana use or something.
That was like remember Laremy Tunsil, right?
Laremy Tunsil was exactly who I had in mind.
Perfect example. Think of it this way. I bet whoever knew that knew it for months, but they waited to leak it the second before the draft. Right. That's the point. That's exactly it. So yeah, they came forward, they make this shit up because they were hoping to get him to fall. They were hoping that someone will believe this crap because yeah, his uncle does own JetBlue. So maybe by some stupid logic, because that's true, the other stuff is. So they'll be like, we don't want to draft him and he'll fall.
All you need is a little kernel of truth. just a little kernel of truth, and as long as there's a little bit there, some people, the gullible people, will believe the rest of it.
The
That's
three-car
the way it
garage thing
works.
is so funny. I just hope when he I just want in the house he bought. I just wish it were like three garages, and he just stood in front of it, took a picture for like Insta.
3 garages.
Like whatever,
Okay.
because the stupid three. Because that was that stupid thing they were saying about him.
Okay.
I bet he's
the
a.
3 car.
They were saying that I bet he's a three-car garage kid. Like that's a term.
I got no garages. How are your garages doing?
Yeah, I don't have any garages, so I guess I'm really fucked. Like,
if it's raining, I'm in trouble. But we get some storms down here in the Mid-Atlantic, so yeah, got to leave that poor guy out, and yeah, it's okay. But we're surviving all right without garages.
yeah, man. So we talk about all these comments, and that's just all of it. Like, I think that there's even more. There's tons of them, but all of them they just seal it because they keep coming back to these same things, right? Like we saw these trends, right? We're seeing progress in the right direction. We're seeing again, not instant magic immediately, but we're seeing intelligent decisions, right? Making better decisions, working hard at his craft, coming back stronger. Little things, right? Like, which really, in a way, we say little things, but they're big things. Coming back stronger this year, physically better, working day in and day out. He went with his receivers, right? He went twice. He went back in June and July. And I love that. If we talk about that one for a minute, my favorite thing about that, and just showed me again, there's so many things I feel like we're just like I've talked about with Joe Douglas, where Zach showed me like he gets it. When they were doing the thing back in June and July, he said, yeah, we're going to get together. We're going to throw the ball. But that's not what matters the most. Like we throw the ball in practice. What matters is us hanging out. He's like, I want to look at the exact quote, but he's like, it was us hanging out, watching movies at night, talking, getting to know each other better. He's like, that's what matters. And he's 1,000% right. Every team that's been great has good chemistry. That's just how it works. If you don't have chemistry, you can't succeed.
And you can learn a lot about even the game that way. I mean, you grow closer as friends. I mean, you learn things about the game that way. Whether it's kicking back, having a drink, whether it's that cooking his eggs for 8 minutes, I don't care. It's all good, But those are some of the environments when you're away from the facilities before training camp where bonding happens. And that's the type of stuff we never see that can make a difference because, if you care about each other, it makes it that much likely you're going to work that much harder for each other. And
exactly.
in football,
you
really need. In football, I think you need it more so than in other sports. I mean, you don't really need it as much in basketball. There's plenty of examples. Baseball, it helps, but football, you really with so many people, when you have that many more personalities to deal with, you really need leadership from both coaches, and you need to have a couple of players who are that. And the fact that Zach Wilson, we have to bring this up, was voted captain today, the one offensive captain. Mm-hmm. I think that is all you need to say about Zach Wilson as a man and as a leader.
Exactly. And that's because, as shout out to bringing that out. As captains are voted by their peers. The captains are not, picked by the coaches. They're picked by their teammates. The offense comes together and decides who they want to represent them. And it's not always the quarterback. Usually it is. And that's, when it's not the quarterback, you see people questioning why it isn't. It was the same thing in college, right? I remember you go back to BYU. Legit, man, same shit. You remember people saying he wasn't a captain, right? He wasn't a captain. So I remember I did this and other people did too. I found a picture of Zach Wilson in every single jersey he ever wore in college. And there was a C right in the corner of every jersey he had. The black jersey, the white jersey, the blue jersey. There's a C in every corner of it, but he's not a captain. Like, it was all this crazy, stupid crap of, again, just hoping. What is that old saying? You throw shit at the wall long enough, you hope something sticks?
Did BYU? So how did BYU do it? Seriously, did they rotate captains throughout the season or something? I
don't remember exactly how. I remember somebody said at one point where it was something like there's like the first main captains and then there's the secondary captains, and he was maybe the secondary 1 year and the primary 1 year. But that's just splitting hairs. Like, that's just finding something to complain about for the sake of finding something to complain about. Like, you watch the kids play and that's what jumped out. And like you said, being nominated the captain, that's a big statement. The entire offense is saying this is our leader. Just like on defense, they nominate CJ Mosley, which we got to love as well. Like, That's the leader of the defense. Like, he's the guy. We see it in the huddles before the game. Who leads the offense? Zach Wilson. Who leads the defense afterward? CJ Mosley. That's what they do.
And for everybody who wanted Justin Hardy cut, well, that's now you know why he is never going to be cut. And there's certain people, I'm not going to mention them, who wanted Hardy out in the worst way. talk about, he may not be the player he was he did not have as good of a season last year, but the bottom line is he's respected, he's admired, and he sets an example. Okay. Yes. Were there some penalties? Yes, there were missed tackles, but the bottom line is they love him, they admire him, and they look at him to set the example. And our special teams were a lot better in coverage than they had been previously when Braden Mann was the best friggin' tackler on special teams. So, yeah, so that's just another example of the leadership. Quick hello to PCR with his culinary tips. Yep, nobody wants rubbery eggs. For me, 3.5. I like a medium, so about 3.5 eggs is good. And Jets82, good to see you too, buddy. Always good to see you. All right. Yeah, we're building.
Yeah,
it's building up a little bit here. I like it.
Love it. Yeah, you guys, you let me know, what you're thinking, your thoughts.
You have any questions for us? Fire away. I mean, hey, it's game week. It is game week.
We're getting there, man. This is exciting. We're getting there. This Sunday, man. It's coming. We're just under a week away.
It still doesn't feel real. Yeah. Are you going to be doing anything for in terms of videos or how you watch the game? Do you have like a game day routine? What are you going to do?
Well, my routine has always been because and everyone, I love watching the game. Like, I don't want to get too distracted with other stuff. So, like, I tweet out during the game and I put content out throughout, but I tend to not do as many streams. I've thought about it in the past, but, I like to watch the game, focus on the plays, relax, kick back, and then tweet stuff during the game. But I'm always up to, trying new things.
Gotcha. Yeah, I always go out because the Jets are never on national TV. And obviously I'm out of market. I've been out.
That's the thing, yeah. That's the
I haven't lived in the New York market. I haven't lived in the New York market since 1997. It's been a minute. But I had my sports pub in Chicago and St. Charles specifically where I would always go. Fantastic. Plus September and October, they had dollar burgers and free popcorn and, $5 mini pitchers of domestic beer, like 2.5 glasses, and they kept it ice cold. Oh, it was perfect. But, but you couldn't watch the game with other Jets fans. It was 95% Bears, 4% Packers, and 1% miscellaneous. And I was the only Jets fan. So every time the Jets did something good or bad, the whole restaurant knew. Let's just leave it at that. But, then I moved
So onto
here,
that,
so,
though. So onto that, while talking about week one, that was the last topic I definitely wanted to bring up. So we've talked about Zach. We talked about, how much we love him, the things we love, we've seen from him, the potential he has. When does he return, right? So we heard Zach say himself he's ready week one, right? And you always want the player to say that, right? Like, you always want the guy to be like, I'm ready to go. But like Robert Saleh's reiterated, I brought the quotes up as well, have it right here. When they asked him just last week when he said Zach flew back, said he's here, he's walking, he said he's in good spirits, he's chomping at the bit to, get his rehab started. But he ended it importantly with, we're going to make sure we do right by him and make sure he's 100% healthy. Whenever that is, that's when he'll hit the field. And Saleh kind of reiterated again today. So Saleh did initially say that, yes, he could play week one. He said that Zach's looking good. I'll get the exact quote right here. Because as you guys know, I try to always, bring you guys the exact quotes. I do it on Twitter, bring you guys, exactly what Saleh said. Try not to cut it, to give you exactly, what was said from the coach. So, right here. So on Zach Wilson playing week one, he said, we put Zach through a workout today. He's looked good. He feels good. We're going to see how the knee responds today and tomorrow, and we'll have an answer for everybody on Wednesday. But then he was followed up with, is it possible Zach plays on Sunday? And he said, yes. He said, yes, it's possible Zach plays Sunday. But we have to come back to what we just said, where he said, remember, we're going to make sure he's healthy. Because again, we want him out there. It's a combination of, this is our guy. We want to see what he can do with this team we built. But you also want to put him out if he's not ready. You don't want to put the kid out before he's 100% so he gets hurt again, God forbid. So I like this. And this one I thought didn't get, a lot of, traction. But I thought this was interesting. Robert Saleh, when they asked him on when he'll make the decision on Zach Wilson playing. And instead of talking about Zach Wilson, he said, it does nothing for us from a game plan standpoint.
He did
All
say that.
Three of our quarterbacks are capable of running our offense at a high level. And that's what's really important. He feels there's no need to rush Zach Wilson out. He believes in Joe Flacco leading this team. He believes in Mike White. He's not going to throw. He wants to see Zach. And that's kind of, the next quote I'm going to bring up after. I definitely want to hear, what you think, Adam. But he wants him to be healthy. That's really important.
I actually played Saleh's press conference on my way home as I was driving through Williamsburg, Virginia. And at the first 6-7 questions were all about Zach Wilson. I didn't think they were going to get off the topic, as a matter of fact. I guess so. The training staff worked him out. Saleh was not there watching it. I guess he had to coach the rest of the team.
That is true. Saleh did say that, which is important. Yeah, he said that he's not. Yeah,
right. Right. And part of me was like, why is he watching? And then I'm like, oh, that will probably happening at the same time the practice is going on, so that I can sort of understand it. But because the media was asking him, okay, what did that entail? Did he throw? Was there throwing involved? I mean, what did he do? And I did find it interesting, that quote about all three quarterbacks can run this offense, because I'm like, you have three very different style quarterbacks here. So I'm like, what quarterback can for an offense that apparently it's supposed to be quarterback friendly, but now we're realizing it takes some learning. Is there any quarterback that can't thrive under this offense? I just wonder, what coach, what are the qualifications for a quarterback who can't succeed? I guess Sam Darnold is the only correct answer. That's why he's not here anymore.
I guess, yeah.
That's the only conclusion I can come to now.
That's funny, because it's true. You are right. They are very different quarterbacks. And what's crazy is I thought Joe Flacco didn't have any legs on him at all, man. But you mentioned that Falcons joint practice, that that running throw he made to Garrett Wilson on the sideline. Man, I was impressed. I was like, damn. Joe Flacco we don't want him running the ball. That's not any situation you want, but he can still move. I was impressed. I didn't think that was possible.
The only time Flacco should be running the ball is like 3rd and 1 quarterback sneak. Let's knock their ass off the ball. As Rex
I don't even know then. Yeah, like at that point, right? Like, put Conklin as fullback and let him plow his ass forward.
I would have said put Bam Knight in.
We could talk about that, man. We could totally talk about that. The freaking
let's get it. Yeah, let's get into it right now. Before,
oh my God, let's do it. You guys out there, please, let us know what you're thinking about. Excuse me, the whole Bam Knight situation, because man, that just totally pissed me off, because we talked about it on your show. Remember, I was saying Bam Knight, man, I loved him at NC State. And, you talk about what Michael Carter played against him in North Carolina a lot. Talked about how good he was blown away that the kid went undrafted. He's like, he's going to make the whole league pay. Breece Hall was talking about how great he is. I liked how good he looked in the preseason and as well as in camp. It just didn't make sense to me. We even talked about if the Jets were going to keep 3 running backs, cut Tevin Coleman. And that's what they did. So I think that's the craziest part to me, because I don't know if you would agree. If you told me I could have Tevin Coleman as my 3rd running back or Ty Johnson, I would have taken Tevin Coleman. So that's why I'm really confused here. Like, that's what I don't get. And as you guys know, and I point this out all the time, I love Joe Douglas. I think he really is a great GM, but no one's going to agree with everything, right? Like, we're different people. He's going to make decisions, and I'm like, what the hell? And this is totally one of them. Like, when we brought in Bam Knight, I was so excited about it. I was like, okay, this could be a 3-headed monster. Like, I was ready for a 2-headed monster with Breece Hall and Michael Carter. I'm like, this could be a 3-headed monster. Then they cut Tevin Coleman, and I'm like, it's Bam Knight. I just don't get it. I am completely, taken aback that Ty Johnson was kept over him. It just makes no sense to me. And again, if that was the plan, you keep Tevin Coleman over Ty Johnson. So if you can help me out, I'm all shades of confused.
This was halfway through my drive home. I get the alert that the Jets were playing roster gymnastics. That was the tweet. I think that was the tweet from Brian Costello. I opened up the tweet, and when I saw it, I literally had to hit record on my phone. I had to upload a video. I was so annoyed. I had to record from the road. I was doing my Jet Central impersonation. I was being like Ian, because I was literally recording from the car. I was so aggravated by this, and I don't know. There's a couple of players that I just cannot understand how they're on this roster. I could come up with an attribute for most of them that they can do. Ty Johnson is like the cockroach of this offense. I'm sure he's a fine human being. I'm sure he's nice.
Bro, he is
we can't get rid of him.
He's nowhere close to the cockroach that Nathan Shepard is.
That's the one on defense. That's the one on defense. Exactly.
But Ty Johnson, oh man, at least we got rid of Chuma Edoga. We got rid of one cockroach. One cockroach scurried out of here, and someone picked his ass up.
That's true, but here's the thing: who's the good player? Who's the good young off tackle that Chuma Edoga was keeping off the roster? There isn't one. Okay, we didn't have Max Mitchell already had his roster spot, so I don't mind that as much.
I'll be honest, man. I really like Grant Herman's. I was really thinking Grant Herman's
because he starts fights.
I actually talked about it. And it made seriously, like it actually made sense to me because throughout all the press conferences, Robert Saleh reiterated the same thing. When they asked him about fights, he said, you don't want it to turn into the point where they're like beating the crap, like the holy crap out of each other. But at the same time, you want that because these guys are constantly going up against each other in practice. They're seeing the same guy day in and day out and day in and day out. If it wasn't a good matchup, there wouldn't be Chippy. You know what I mean? Like that's what Saleh said. It shows that they're both there. And the way I looked at it was he's getting chippy with Carl Lawson, with guys like JFM. If he wasn't playing well, why would they want to get chippy with him? You know, like that's the way I look at it. If they're dominating his ass and putting him down, why would they be chippy? I think they're getting chippy. And again, I mentioned it. I was on Buffalo Jets fans channel. Shout out to him. He was doing the game stream and I was just watching the game and I'm like, man, I'm actually impressed with 63's pass blocking. And I looked it up and it was Grant Hermans. He was playing left tackle. Don't get me wrong, his run blocking needs a lot of work, but I was actually very impressed with his pass blocking. And because of that, he was a guy I would have liked to see make the team.
At least he's on the practice squad, but he also started a fight. I think you said Lawson and JFM. He started a fight with Michael Clemens and lived to tell about it.
I know not many people would. Not many people would make it out the other end of that one.
Oh my God. Who?
And that's what I'm saying. Like,
how do you start a fight with Michael Clemens?
See, he's a guy I was kind of hoping might like sneak up, but like you said, he made it to the practice squad. So
yeah, and at least we kept Marshall, we kept Smart on the practice roster as well.
Dude, I couldn't believe like the Jonathan Marshall Cup blew my freaking mind, bro. The biggest ones to me were Jonathan Marshall and Jason Pinnock. Because these were two guys that you just drafted last year that have both looked good. Like Jason Pinnock had only just transitioned to safety, and since he'd been playing safety, he looked good. Like really promising. A lot more promising than Ashton Davis has looked.
I would throw Guidry in on the same level in terms of
I like Guidry. Bro, Guidry, I like him. I do.
I like him, but he has a very, very specific role. He's okay at coverage, but he has to cover the right type of player. If they think Tony Adams can do the job as a backup slot corner, great. I'm all for it. But here's the thing. Back to Bam. He brings a dimension, that power running, that straight ahead running, a backup returner that these other guys don't do. Even in the preseason, Tevin Coleman, he gets a kick return. He runs in a straight line, 18 yards, boom, flat on his face. What's the freaking point of that? Take a knee, Tevin. I mean, I respect Tevin Coleman. You know, he's had a nice career in the NFL. This is not a team that is like one player away. This is not a team that needs a bunch of one-year veterans. I'm looking a couple of years down the road. I'm trying to build a foundation here. Why would Joe Douglas cut Bam Knight instead of Ty Johnson? What does Ty Johnson do well? He
the logic just made no sense because again, like we said,
the ball. Yeah. When he catches it, he's okay at tiptoeing down the sideline. That is it. He is not going to have a role in this offense. Stop with Ty Johnson.
Yeah. And like we talked about on your channel, right? Breece Hall's the guy and Michael Carter's the guy. So the guy you're keeping is running back 3 at the most. Why do you want a guy that's been around over a guy that can prove himself like a rookie? You remember, I hate this and I put it out on, I hoped this wasn't going to be the case, but you remember I said, mark my words, if we cut Bam Knight, it is going to be 1,000% the Danny Woodhead situation. And I think it really is. Because think about the Danny Woodhead situation. When Danny Woodhead was an undrafted rookie on our team in 2009, we had outstanding running backs. We had Thomas Jones, Sean Green was in his rookie year, and we had Leon Washington. So it wasn't that Woodhead wasn't good. We just couldn't keep him because we liked what we had. And it wasn't like our running game wasn't good for those next few years. It was great. It's just that Danny Woodhead went on to have a freaking really good career, and it would have been nice if it was with the Jets. So I look at Bam Knight the same way. Like, we don't need him. Breece Hall and Michael Carter Michael Carter the first are going to be great. But it would have been nice, man. And I think he's going to carve out a career somewhere, and it would have been nice if it was here.
So the way that it works, is this like when with cuts, it's like a 24-hour period where a team has to claim him. If nobody does, then the Jets could stash him with that last practice squad spot.
It's waivers, yeah. And he could make it. He could totally make it. I'd be shocked.
It is a running back. I mean, who's dying for a running back? I don't know. I mean, how many teams? I feel like you can get a run. Yeah, I'm not as worried about running back, but again, I was shocked when he went undrafted too. I mean, I was not excited about like Brees Hall at first, not the draft pick, but the idea of drafting Brees Hall because I felt there was so much depth in the 4th and 5th round at running back between Damian Pierce. I was looking at him, Tyler Beatty not looking as good, but Bam Knight was one of the running backs that I was excited about. So hey, there's some guys I liked who are looking good. There's some guys I did like who aren't looking quite so good. I'll be the first to admit it. But he was the undrafted free agent I was most excited that the Jets got. The other one I really wanted, by the way, was the safety, Verone McKinley, who the Dolphins just let go. So that is another player. I still am worried about safety. That is actually a player that I would look at, but yeah, I can't look at him to start immediately. But yeah, between Ashton Davis, Nathan Shepard, and Ty Johnson, did they have pictures of Joe Douglas? Did Manish Mehta give them the pictures that he took of Joe Douglas and Joe Douglas' son at the baseball game right before Mehta got fired?
Oh, man, I remember that. All those stories coming out. Bro, that was crazy, some of the stuff coming out that like he was like, I couldn't believe some of it, that he was like, holding things over people's heads. He was getting blackmail to get like inside scoops. I was like, Jesus Christ. Like, is this Lex Luthor? Like, I was like, what
I don't know what
hell?
the other explanation is.
Like, I met the dude at camp in 2018. He seemed like the nicest guy. I was like, Jesus Christ. Yeah. I was like, man, he would have like stabbed me if I wasn't looking. I was like, oh my God.
He needs Jesus. We all do as Jets fans. Oh, we're getting some new additions. D-Rock,
yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Bro, I wish, man. Buddha Love. So, unfortunately, if you guys can help me out, I got to get myself up to 1,000 subscribers to be able to do so. I'm at about 550 and change right now. If you guys can help me out, be much appreciated. Once I hit there, I'm
up to about 120. I'm on hot streak now.
Nice, good stuff, bro.
I finally crossed 100, but yeah, I guess you could throw a cash app. Like Long Beach Joe puts his cash app up on the screen. So I don't know if that's
a good idea.
But you could do that. I haven't gone live yet. I don't know. I'm just waiting for like the right time to go live, and also when would I do it? But it is something that I am thinking about, just because it'd be the first time I ever did it. It'd be, but if people want me to do it, I'll do it.
Yeah, I would love to do it. Yeah, if we can get myself there, that'd be awesome. That's the goal. That's
I got a lot of people I could talk to, and yes, you would definitely be one of them. But I might bring some outside perspectives. Like I have a pretty good friend who's a Bills fan, and well, Jets fans don't become friends with Patriots fans. That's just like a sin. But even though I went to college in Boston, I had to cut a bunch of people off after all of that went down. So when does Zach Wilson return? I know that's the question you put up.
That is the $1 million question.
Yeah.
If I can, though, quick before we get in. So we talked about, Robert Saleh saying health is the key, right? We want him out there. We need to see what he can do with this team in the second year with all this talent around him, but we don't want him to get hurt. I think that the last thing he kind of said about him kind of nailed it. He said eventually Zach Wilson has to get back in there. Whether it's this week, next week, the week after, it doesn't matter. You just have to rip the Band-Aid off. Like I've said from the beginning, when Zach is ready to play and healthy, he's going to play football. And that's the end of it. Like, that's what if Zach is ready to go week 1, he'll be out there. It's that simple. If he's not ready to go, he won't. And honestly, I kind of like Joe Flacco week 1, man. I do. Like, it kind of seems poetic with all this talent on this team, Joe looking as hot as he's been. Give him the opportunity, stick it to his old team. Because they literally told him, you're not good enough anymore. Let him show them that he is.
And it's a situation where, the one situation, I can't say this is worst case, but imagine if, like, say, the Flacco plays the first 2 games, they win. Zach comes back for the Cincy game and they lose. That week is going to be torture. and Salah's going to have to hold the line. I mean, Saleh, he's a very good communicator, and obviously the players like him. But there are going to be occasional times when he needs to be a jerk. Whether that is to a player, whether that's to the media, and he has to put his foot down and he has to squash the rumors right away. I like that he has said when Zach is ready, Zach will play. But one thing that we can't allow on this team is a quarterback controversy. We cannot have it. The players want to play with Zach. I believe they do. I believe that they believe in him. Now Zach has to go prove it. And don't put him out there when he's compromised. Because one of the best things, and we talked about this at the top of the show for those who have joined us late, he is great at being elusive, at being mobile, at escaping. And if his knee is not allowing him to do that to the best of his ability, you know what? I don't want to see him on the field yet.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, man. And if anything, it could be like we saw, just making a cut, literally non-contact injury. So many things can happen. I think, like you said, the most important thing was not having that controversy. Robert Saleh nailed it, right? He literally said, when Zach is there, he will play. It's that simple, right?
Yep.
Joe can play. He can throw 550 yards, 8 touchdowns. When Zach is healthy, Zach is the quarterback. Like, that is just a fact. And I think that is a really important statement you make because, again, that could be a thing, right? What if Joe comes out week 1 and kicks the shit out of his old team and puts up unbelievable yards? Well, like you said, are people going to say, well, maybe we should sit Zach for the rest of the year and ride out Joe Flacco?
There were people who are saying that, but you know what? Even if we have a really good season, and let's say that Flacco, we know what would happen outside of injury, but let's say that Flacco somehow led the Jets to a 10-7 season and they actually made the playoffs. We still haven't learned what Zach Wilson is. So it's like, great, we have some core, but we still have, there's the elephant in the room. Actually, it's a couple of, it's like that elephant's the size of the Grand Canyon. It would be so big. So you know what? Even if we had success this year and Zach's not on the field, you still have the biggest possible question looming over your head like a cloud. That is why Zach has to play as soon as he is ready and fully able to go.
Yeah, you're right, man. And the best
That's
way
it.
also to look at it, shout out to Michael. I just saw you subscribe. Much appreciated. He points out he needs to play. We need to see what we've got in him. It's exactly that, man. It's 100% that. So, if this team, the best way to look at it, the 2015 Jets, that team that was all free agency built, no draft talent, a win now team. That's the team you can make the argument, okay, let's have Joe play with. That is not what we have. We have a young team that's building for the future. Our core is young. Our young core at corner, at receiver, everywhere around the field, running back is all young. It's building to go somewhere. So, like Michael points out, like Adam pointed out, can't create a QB controversy. We have to see what Zach is. This is a young team that's built for him to succeed. And for all the reasons we mentioned, and that was kind of the whole point of this episode, I've been saying it for a while. I feel like everything is there. I feel like, you want these things in a quarterback for them to be successful. And yeah, it obviously comes down to him. It comes down to him taking these intangibles and making them into greatness. But my whole point has been they're there. And that everything I've wanted to see, I've seen. From again, from the pocket awareness to the anticipation to the mobility to the timing to the throw to everything we've talked about. I feel like it's all there. The team is being put around him. Man, I mentioned it before. I feel like this is a team with Zach Wilson healthy. I feel like we can easily win 9 games. I do. I feel like this is a team that could win 9 games. And that being the case, if you can swing 1 or 2 more in your direction, that's a wild card team.
The word easily scares me. What comes easy for the Jets except pain?
Again, I don't want to, and I try not to be too optimistic because even last year, even last year I was like, we have a rookie OC, we have a rookie head coach, and we saw that. It takes time. But man, this year, well, Flores figured it out. We've clearly seen that. The offensive line is significantly better. The wide receiver talent is unbelievable. The defense looks really good. The pass rush looks excellent, which is what this defense is predicated against. The secondary looks good with the corners. Again, I don't want to sound too, I really feel like this team it's where it needs to be on paper.
And I feel like kicker. And we have a kicker.
Dude, I love Zerline. You remember, I kept saying, Eddie Pinheiro reminded me of the Amendola situation where, Matt Amendola was kicking perfect for the whole beginning of the year. And everyone's like, oh, even me, I made the mistake. I wholly admit it. I was like, we found our kicker. He's perfect on the season. And then he started to miss and suck. And we were like, oh, now we remember why he's been passed around the league. I felt like Pinheiro was the same thing. I really wanted Zerline, man.
Ever since Jason Myers, we were sending all these project kickers with huge legs, but not much accuracy. It never, ever worked. Pinheiro had the accuracy, but only so much power. I never wanted to hear about launch angle. The bottom line, does the ball go through the freaking uprights or does it not? And with Pinheiro, it did. One kick was blocked. But, I was fine with Zerline. It was just like, you know what? At least there's competition. They did it well. And, yes, I am very happy that Greg Zerline is our kicker. So just little things like that, because here's why it's like, oh, the kicker. Okay, fine. Here's the thing. We're going to be in a lot of close games this year. You're not going to see half the games last season. And for years, we've been out of the game halfway through the first quarter. It's like, okay, time to settle in because this is going to be 3.5 more quarters of misery. You knew the game was done. Done. New Orleans, Philly, Indy, both Buffalo games, both New England games. We got our asses kicked game after game after game. There are going to be a lot of close games that the Jets are in. And little things like being able to kick well are going to make a difference in if they win or if they lose. Look at the game against the Titans. How many people remember we won that game? The last play of that game was Randy Bullock missing a field goal for Tennessee.
And not even that, just special teams in general.
Yeah.
Right? Like you mentioned Justin Hardy before.
Yeah.
If Hardy was on the team solely to be a cornerback, he wouldn't be on the team. He would have been cut day one. That's what he's not a corner. But when it comes to special teams, he's one of the best gunners. And the best example was look at how upset the New Orleans Saint fans were when he was let go. Remember? It was like unanimous. They were taking to Twitter. They were like mourning his loss. And they were putting videos of him just instantaneously hitting guys like the second they caught the ball. So yeah, man, special teams is so underappreciated. Like you said, when you make the game-winning kick, when you stop a team in their 20s so that they can't score, that makes a difference.
And we had 2 top tacklers on special teams last year. 2 that completely stood out above the rest. Justin Hardy, Del'Shawn Phillips. Phillips was actually a surprise cut for me, but because I'll tell you, they were not going to lose both of those 2 players off special teams. Brant Boyer, I can tell you right now, would not have it. Hardy was never going to – once Phillips left, Hardy was never going anywhere. That's the way that I feel about it. And we'll see Del'Shawn week 1 when he's on the Ravens special teams. Let's see if he can tackle Braxton Berrios. Let's see him try.
Will. Yeah, we will. Yeah, man. And there's so many interesting characters. Like another interesting one to bring up, Tony Adams. Right?
Here we go. Yep. Okay, Tony. Yep.
What were you thinking?
I saw D-Rock's comment, and it is not sitting well with me. It is not sitting well with me at all.
We'll definitely bring that up, D-Rock. And like I mentioned, to all you guys, please bring your comments, your concerns. Even if we disagree, we'll let you know. We talked about Ty Johnson. We totally agree. Totally mind-boggling. If you were going to keep a veteran, it should have been Tevin Coleman. So it just doesn't make sense. Like if that was the plan, Coleman should be there, not him. Just don't get it. But the Bryce Hall situation, I've liked him. I felt like he put up really good numbers last year. Mm-hmm. I admit Sauce and DJ Reed are going to be the future on the outside. Like, I really do believe that. The problem is DJ Reed's not healthy, so it looks like Bryce Hall is going to get his opportunity. But the biggest thing for Bryce Hall was that game. And yeah, don't get me wrong, he was freaking garbage in that Giant game. Like, I don't know what had happened. I don't know what he was smoking or if he was maybe sick that day. I don't know what it was, but he looked atrocious. Absolutely awful. But when they asked Robert Saleh about it, the first thing he said was, players have bad games. Like, that happens. Like, it's not like he's consistently been bad. And Adam, we've talked about it before. When you look at the numbers for Bryce Hall, the numbers are really good, and numbers don't lie. That's the one thing. Stats don't lie. And we look at the numbers he's put up. And as a player in just his first year starting last year, in a full season, he looked really good. I really liked him.
He played more defensive snaps than anybody on that defense.
Yeah, and he had,
nobody else came close.
Were really high.
He was durable. He was durable, and he could cover. So he's not great at covering Kyle Pitts. Fine. Not many people are going to be. And yeah, this game was horrible. There was no way around it. But again, like we said earlier, you can't overreact to preseason games. Based off that, if we're doing the same logic, Chris Streveler is the next Joe Montana.
Bro, I thought it was crazy. Remember when they brought Streveler in? I won't forget this. They started comparing him to Theismann, and I was like, wait a minute. Like, you don't hear that. Like, you don't hear new guys being compared to guys like that. Then we started seeing him running and moving, and I was like, I really liked him, man. I still feel like Streveler fit this offense just like Zach Wilson does. Nothing against Mike White. I wanted Streveler as QB3.
One thing is Mike White, he can't throw the ball. He can't really throw the ball more than 15 yards.
I mean, Mike White, he's kind of, and again, I like the kid, but it's not, people pointed out, and it's not a lie. He is kind of skating on that first game. Like that first game, don't get me wrong, he was insane. He broke like Jet records. What was it? Like, it was like the most passing yards for a first Jets quarterback since like Vinny Testaverde in like 2000. But if you look at the numbers since that game, they're not that good.
He was okay. He was doing okay against Indy until he got hurt on that touchdown pass to Elijah Moore. He was doing all right. Then he got hurt, came back from Buffalo against the best defense in the NFL, and he got killed, which happens to most quarterbacks. How many? There aren't too many quarterbacks that are going to succeed against Buffalo. But but Mike White, if he's fortunate, he could have Josh McCown's career. He could kick around the league for 15 years as a backup, or Billy Volek even with like the Titans. He was like the backup with Tennessee for 10, 12 years or whatever it was. He could have that role. But if you're counting on, I don't think any of us are counting on him to be the guy. I was actually wanting him out. I wanted him traded before he became a free agent because
you're saying Mike White.
Yeah, I didn't think that the coaching staff believed in him. And if you don't believe in him, it's like, you know what? Go with Flacco. At the time, it was like, keep Wilson, keep Flacco, that's it. I was good with 2 quarterbacks. This is before Zach got hurt at the time. I was good with 2 and keeping the extra roster spot for that 4th tight end, for that 4th running back, for keeping both Nick Bawden and Lawrence Cager at the time, which is what I wanted to do. At this point, though, now you need 3 quarterbacks, but at this point, if they kept Streveler, if they were able to get anything from Mike White, like a conditional 7th, I would have done it, and I would have made Streveler the 3rd quarterback. I really would have done it.
Yeah, I think
but now that Wilson got hurt, now it's different because now you can't have Streveler as your backup for this game against Baltimore. You can't have that situation. It's not going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it as either, again, this is QB3, right? Like, Zach Wilson obviously is the guy. You got Joe Flacco. It's QB3. Again, I mean, could we have traded Mike White? Michael points out, I think they could have traded Mike White too. The way I look at it is, and I thought they were going to cut him. I did. So I'm like, if you're going to cut him, getting anything makes sense. Like maybe there's a team that's willing to give you a 6th round pick, like 200 something to have him as like their QB3. I don't know. But if you're going to cut him, it's better than nothing.
Yeah. And I wonder if we could have made a trade for Wesco. With 4 teams claiming him, maybe we could have got something for Wesco. I can't believe those words just came out of my mouth. But maybe
it's the thing with Chuma, right? Like I would have never thought Chuma had trade value. Like if you told me Chuma had trade value, I would have laughed.
If you're an offensive lineman and you can actually walk, you have some trade value. As long as you can walk and go like this, I think you have some value still in the league.
We appreciate you, Buddha Love. Thank you. It's good to know because sometimes we're just out here rambling. So it's good to know our ramblings aren't incoherent.
We thought we'd go an hour. We're up to an hour 22. So hey,
I love it, man. You know me. I love talking about the Jets. We could be like, wait a minute, shit, it's 10 o'clock. What happened? Wait a minute. What happened?
Hey, some of us got to work tomorrow, and some of us got to start the laundry.
So we come back. So we talk. When does Zach return? It could be week 1. It could be week 2. But I think like Salah pointed out, it could be week 3. Like I like the way he said that. He's like this week, next week, the week after. It doesn't matter, right? Like the biggest thing, like you said, it just matters is health. So I wonder, and I don't know what you think. What if they determine that Zach Wilson needs to week 3 to be 100% healthy? Do we have to worry about people taking to social media being like, oh, this is an outrage. Zach should be out there. Why is he waiting? That's a fear that I have that, potentially if they make a decision, well, maybe week 2 or maybe week 3, you're going to see people saying, no, that's crazy. He should be out there. He's the quarterback. But clearly he's not ready. Like Robert Saleh's made it clear when he's ready, he's playing. That's it. When he's ready, he's there. So if he's not there, that means he's not ready.
Okay. I did. If I had to give you a prediction, I would say week 2. I just got a thing, a little link from Cynthia Froylan on NFL.com where she did her, she does all the analytics, all the mathematical models, right? And there's a thing here where she projects each team's win total down to the decimal point, like 9.4 or whatever, their ceiling and their floor. So I just got this released to me. And her projected win total for the Jets is, what would you like to do first? The projected wins, the ceiling, or the floor? Because you said earlier their floor would be what, 7? You think you could see 9 wins?
I would say, I think they could get 9 wins. I remember when I looked at the schedule.
If everything breaks right, I'll give you 9.
I feel like they could get 9. I feel like realistically, we're looking somewhere between 7 and 9. That's what I want to say. We're looking somewhere between 7 and 9. But again, if we can get hot, the momentum's good. The team's playing well. Keep that going. Heck, if we can get 10, we could be a wild card team. And think about how big that would be, right? How big that would be for the New York Jets after all these decades to fucking make the wild card, right? To finally make the playoffs again.
Well, I'm trying to. I would just like to know what gas prices were the last time the Jets were in a playoff game.
Oh man, bro, it's got to be $1 something. Oh crap, man! It was what? It was 2011,
It was
2010.
2010 going into 2011. Yeah, early
Oh man,
2011.
it's been a minute, and that's the
11
thing. Like
years.
that, I think Robert Saleh, Joe Douglas says it all the time, right? They're like the most important thing is playing meaningful games down the road, meaningful games down the stretch, meaningful games in December. The whole point is to win, make the playoffs, win the Super Bowl. Like if that's not the point,
meaningful games. Yeah, here's what Michael says: floor 7, ceiling 10, 11. All right, I'll get to that in a moment. Here is what I truly want. Here's what I will be happy with. If going into week 17, not the last game of the season, but the next to last game of the season, I want to go to the Yahoo playoff scenario generator. I want to type in a bunch of scenarios and come up with a realistic way the Jets can get a playoff berth. I just want to be in the generator. That's all I really want at this point. So if that means 8 wins, great. If that even means 7 wins, okay, I can live with it. But I could live with 8, doubling the win total. I can't be upset if they go 8 and 9 and miss the playoffs.
And that's an important way to look at it.
I'm okay with that.
Some people might be like, they missed the playoffs again, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. Like we've learned that from so many GMs in the past, right? Like trying to makeshift band-aid a team, not knowing how to draft. We're building to something. That's been the whole point here. So progress, right? Like we've been talking about this whole episode with Zach Wilson, seeing progress and the right things and doing the right things. So same thing. If they double the win total, they have 7, 8 wins. Even if we don't make the playoffs, that is a massive progress.
It truly is. Okay, so I'll give you the numbers now on what Cynthia projects. So the projected wins 5.6, the second worst in the AFC, only ahead of the Houston Texans. The ceiling and the floor is what's getting on my nerves. Our floor is 3.9.
Jesus.
By these mathematics. The ceiling, this is going to make it even more aggravated, 7.5. Now, the one
that's
caveat.
A big deviation right
That's horrible. It's
that's
3.5 games.
To say 7-3, that's almost them saying we don't know. Like that's a pretty big deviation.
The one note that they put in was the Jets have several games that are much closer to a 50% win probability than it might seem, meaning they can outperform the figure if they take the games forecasted to be close. Their schedule looks very difficult, especially in the beginning, to which I say, screw the schedule. I don't give a crap. Let me know about injuries. Let me know about previous losses. The schedule can turn on a dime. What if Aaron Rodgers actually gets hurt and Jordan Love is playing? Okay, so the hardest game I think the Jets have outside of, say, Buffalo would be at Denver. That is one game I give them very little chance to win. But I can make an argument for a reasonable case for them winning almost every other game on this schedule. I think Baltimore is going to be one of their 4 hardest games all year to win.
Yeah, I'm with you, dude, 100%. If I were to look at this schedule, if I were to pick just the games that I think they most likely just can't win, we got the Bengals game.
Wow. Okay.
We got the Broncos game, I guess, potentially.
Yes, I would say the Broncos.
The 2 Bills games.
They're going to Green Bay, but the Packers are coming back from London. Keep that in mind. Packers play in London before they play the Jets.
That's true. I mean, I was gonna say the Packers. It was kind of because the London thing I didn't, but that's 4 or 5 though. That's only 4 or 5 games that you feel like okay. They really don't.
I wish we had Buffalo
and I
week
only
17.
The Bengals because again, these are a potential Super Bowl team.
The Bengals aren't a game where I'm going to be like, nah, no shot. They've never played.
I wouldn't. Yeah, honestly, you could go as far to say, and that's the beauty of it, right? If your team is in the right direction, if you're doing the right things, you could really argue that in all these games, right? They could beat the Bills. They could beat There's really no game that's not beatable. Like, there's no game you look at this and say there's 100% chance they can't win. I can't think of any game where I would say 100% chance they can't win. I'd say there's games like we were listing where there's a more likely odd that they don't.
2 of the games we won were against the AFC champions and the team with the best record in the AFC during the regular season. You can't predicting football. It's almost like predicting the NCAA tournament. Every year it gets more challenging. To the point where it's just, and week 1 is always the hardest week to pick outside of week 7. What is it? Week 1, week 17. If you just do okay in the pick'ems those 2 weeks, you're probably going to have a pretty good year, most likely. And I will be getting to work on that myself. But Wow.
Yeah, and then D-Rock
What a
makes an
night.
interesting point. Yeah. So
What we got
I
here?
think it could be that, it doesn't look like Zach's really going to be ready week one. That was
I don't
really
think
kind of
so.
the consensus. I think you might be onto something, D-Rock. And I was thinking the same thing. Why let the Ravens have it so easy, right? Why not let them think, well, there's a chance that Zach Wilson might be playing? Because now they have to prepare for Zach and Joe. And like you pointed out, Adam, those are two massively different quarterbacks with two completely different play styles.
They really are. All three are. Wilson, Flacco, and
Yeah, it is kind of
White.
ironic, like you said.
It's
like there's
crazy.
no. That's why I
But
thought
they can all
Strickland
fit.
made sense. That's why they all fit.
Everybody but Sam Darnold. That's how it works. That's what we said.
I guess
before,
that's
we'll
kind of.
say it
Hey,
again.
the Carolina Panthers are kind of agreeing with you in that fact, right? Anything but Sam Darnold. Like they're like, shit, let's get Baker. Like they're gonna get Rosen in next.
Matt
Like,
Rule. If only I was in Raleigh and not Charlotte, I would have found some Panther fans and I'd be like, "So, what do you really think of Sam Darnold now?" I would have gone walking around thanking people for that. It's funny in the Virginia Jets Club that I'm president of. We have like all these prizes. We do raffles. One of the prizes we have is a Sam Darnold jersey. That is no longer a premium raffle. I think now it's going to be a giveaway.
No. Forget giveaway. You're gonna have to pay people. You're gonna have to pay them to take it off your
Well,
hands.
Harrison, if that's the case, then what are we going to do with the Geno Smith and the Ryan Fitzpatrick jerseys that we still have?
Oh Lord! Oh my God! That's just
Even we
dude,
offered
that was
it
such
to
a crazy year. Like, don't you love that? Like the epitome of Jet dysfunction. Our quarterback has been punched in the jaw by one of his players.
we offered
There
it
we
to
go.
we offered it to a homeless shelter. They said no, thank you.
They said no, thank you. No, they popped you in the jaw.
They did a whole article on that. Samini wrote a whole article on that, on the whole punch. And there's still guys from that team who don't want to talk about it to this day. They feel like it's a violation.
It's embarrassing.
Of locker room etiquette to talk
it's
about.
It's embarrassing. Like you have to literally say that I was on a team where the locker room was so dysfunctional. The quarterback, the most important piece of your team, is under attack.
I don't remember. I have a few vivid Jets draft memories, a couple, but one of them is being in a movie theater, about to walk into a movie theater in Lombard, Illinois, in the west suburbs, about to buy a movie ticket to watch a movie with my friends. They had the draft on TV, and I saw the Geno Smith draft pick. I fell to my knees in agony.
I was
right
pissed.
at that
Dude,
moment.
Who did you want? Because I remember I wanted Eddie Lacy. I really did. And I still think it was a good pick.
He was
Because if
he
you
was
remember,
a couple
he
years.
was really good for 2 years. He was my guy. I remember it specifically. I really wanted because I felt like
People
Mark
talk about
Sanchez had
eating-
gotten, but
Yeah.
Mark Sanchez has gotten the raw end of the stick. Like he had 2 years where they put a quality team around him, and he led you to 2 back-to-back AFC championships. And then in 12, the team's all hurt. And then in 13, the team's eroding the shit. So sorry, in 11, the team was all hurt. And then in 12, it's eroding the shit. So in 13, they draft Geno. Man, I wanted to build around Mark. I honestly wanted to get Eddie Lacy, the running back, and keep with Mark Sanchez as the quarterback.
Which draft was that? Was that 13 that he
That
was
was
drafted?
13.
Yeah,
that was 13 when Geno
right?
was
Yeah,
drafted.
because I know 15 was the year.
Yeah, no, I remember specifically. Like I wanted Eddie Lacy to be the guy for Mark. Because remember, back then the running game was still a big deal. That was back when the running game, that bell cow, was still a thing. So yeah, that was my thing. I really wanted Lacy, and I wanted Mark Sanchez to be the quarterback.
And that was also the Manti Te'o draft. Oh my gosh! Yeah, I don't even think we got a chance. I don't think we got a chance. Wait, where did we draft? What pick number was Geno? For 39.
He was in the second round.
39.
That quarterback draft was so bad. Not a single.
Oh my lord, it was so anemic.
Like
EJ Manuel.
Yeah, I was gonna say, bro, that was. Oh, EJ Manuel and Geno Smith were the first 2 quarterbacks in that draft. Like enough said.
Did you know? Let's have a little fun with this. You know who number 3 was? I will say number 3 and number 4 are going to make you. I will say this: Mike Francesa liked number 3.
Wait, what was it?
NC State. Mike Francesa really liked this guy. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. Okay.
Oh, who you think of Mike Glennon?
It was Mike Glennon.
Number 4. Right when you said NC State, I was like, we're going with Mike Glennon here.
Number 4.
There was a chance we were going to get him. Remember, we
it gets better.
dodged the ball.
Oh yeah, it gets
totally
even. Number 4 is still in the league. It's Matt Barkley. No, Matt Barkley was the 4th quarterback picked in that draft, and then number 5, I think number 5 was Ryan Nassib by the Giants. Oh my gosh! I mean, this is one anemic pick, and 2 picks after we took Geno. Well, let's see what we could have had. Robert Woods was picked 41. Oh, that would have been nice. Kiko Alonso at 46, Le'Veon Bell at 48. Oh man, we didn't need Eddie Lacy. We could have drafted Le'Veon back then. Man, I like Jamie Collins at 52, the Patriots owning it again, and then Lacy at 61, Travis Kelce at 63. My God, that was a horrible quarterback draft, but you had some studs in that draft, that's for sure. Man,
Yeah,
Travis
I'm
Kelce 63.
Yeah, so shout out to Michael. He said, which draft did Itzik have a billion picks and completely blow it?
Oh God, don't
I
get me
think
going
you
on.
might be thinking of the 2014 draft.
Yes, you
So the
you are.
2014 draft, and even the 2012 draft was pretty, But yeah, bro, that 2014 draft.
Oh my God.
Oh man, I don't even want to you look at that list.
Yep.
There's not a single name on that list except Quincy and
Quincy
that even had semblance of anything.
The only other one I'll get, and that was actually a trivia question that I did with Green Bean. I said, name the Idzik 12. It took him about 12 minutes. Yeah, the Idzik 12. That's right.
Remember
that's
when
what it
we
is.
thought Jason Morrow was going to be our next safety?
Yes, I did.
Bro, I remember. We all did. I did too.
I bought
we all
into
did because he was awesome in college. He kicked ass in college. I was like, this is the guy. We got our tight end.
I got to admit, all I needed was Chad Pennington announcing the draft pick, and I was sold. That was it for me. I was in. I was done. Pennington's announcing it. I'm good. That's it. But yeah, the only thing with the Idzik 12 is only 3 of those picks were in the top 3 rounds. We had 3 4s, 1 5, 4 6, and 1 7. And
he was famous for that. If you look at 2012, he did the same thing. We had 3 6s and 2 7s.
And the 2 best players were Quincy Enunwa and Dakota Dozier. Dozier had a good career for a while as a backup offensive lineman. He was okay. He was useful, but when you start with Calvin Pryor, Jason Morrow, Dexter McDougal, Jalen Saunders, who never played a game in the NFL, I don't think, and Shaq Evans. I was Evans. Evans never played a game in the NFL.
Evans never played at all.
Jeremiah George
and Jalen Sanders. Talk about the 2 worst back-to-back wide receiver picks.
You mean aside from Adarius Stewart and Chad Hansen?
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. You got competition there. Oh man, dude, Chad Henson, bro. Chad Henson, short superstar. Remember, every year in camp, it's like this guy's gonna be great.
He was the king of shorts and shells.
He was like the king. The shorts are on. He looks like the next Randy Moss. Yep. And then the pads come on. It's like, where the hell did he go?
And the most famous player from the draft is IK. IK and Kapali. We drafted him.
He's only famous because he popped Geno.
Yeah, Taj Boyd because Rex had to have his Clemson pick. Trevor Riley, Brandon Dixon. Yeah, Trevor Riley was, oh my God. I mean, that draft was just, I don't know how I felt about it at the time, but I thought Pryor would be fine and Amaro would be fine, but it was like, oh my gosh. And I'll tell you the other guy who I admit I got suckered in by, Stephen Hill. I thought Stephen Hill was going to be good. And as long as the Bills were on the other side of the field, he was pretty good.
I mean, I knew
he caught touchdowns. That's more than Denzel Mims has ever done.
I knew coming in, I knew Stephen Hill was a one-trick pony. He was the deep ball guy. But I figured he would develop. I was like, okay, he'll develop a route tree. No, just nothing. Just literally never any development. I mean, if you wanted to throw him the deep ball, he did have a couple of nice catches.
He did. I mean,
that was the silver lining. If you want to send him deep, he can make a couple of nice ones.
And he did the JETS Jets chant from the draft stage. That just stuck the knife in even further when it didn't work out.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point. And you guys know I talk about this. I always say I really believe Joe Douglas is a freaking great GM, man. I think this guy gets it. Now, some people have taken it to another extent where they're like, well, are you saying Joe Douglas is the greatest Jets GM ever and the greatest GM of all time? There's a difference. I'm saying he's a great GM because I love the moves he makes. I love since he's come in. We talk about these drafts, how deplorable and pathetic this drafting was until he came here. Even the 2020 draft, it didn't pan out. If you look at it from, again, him just coming in, right? He missed the whole offseason before, the year before that. Haven't exactly.
Yes.
All the players he took, they made sense at the pick he took them, and they filled a need at the time.
Yep.
So I really have felt, like I said, that he could be great. But again, people saying is he the greatest ever? Obviously, yeah, he's never made the playoffs. He's never had major winning seasons yet.
That's why he asked for a 6-year contract. That's what people
Exactly.
He knew.
Well,
He has studied under
yeah.
Howie Rose, Ozzie Newsome, and Howie Roseman. He knew what he would have to do to turn it around. And I guarantee he said that to the Johnsons. Like, you can have the quick fix, but you're going to get seduced like you did in 2015, like you did, even in the years before that. We're going to do if we're going to do it, we're going to do it my freaking way. And that is the only way that I know how to do it. And that's how he got the 6 years. And they believed enough in him. They believed in his vision to where he did it. And I'll give you another thing. One of the things that bugs me is when people say the Jets will never win with the Johnsons in charge. What are we basing that on? They made it to the AFC Championship game twice. Unless I checked, the owners were Woody and Chris Johnson, I believe. Yes, they definitely were.
Well, so
you just have to hire the right
way.
people and put them in the right place. And they did that, I believe, with Joe Douglas. Robert Saleh, we will find out.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you're saying about Joe Douglas. And that was the biggest key, right? Like, and I was one of the proponents of it. You guys might remember on social media, on Twitter, that before they gave the keys to Joe Douglas, I was one of the ones saying that I wanted the Johnsons to either potentially sell the team or give the keys to Joe Douglas, because we'd seen for years, we'd made the playoffs in the past, but since then, we've seen the years of the micromanaging, them making the decision of who they're going to hire, the way they handled the Gase thing with Joe, the whole thing,
overreacting to what the fans want, to what they think
all
the
of that,
fans
to the point
want.
where instead of having a GM reporting to a coach or to him, that's what I'm saying. They bring in Gase, they make him the unheralded king of the Jets. Then they bring in Joe Douglas. They're both at the same level, which makes no sense. What needed to happen was that they needed to give the keys to Joe Douglas. And I said when that happened, that's when I was okay. And I think that's when we've seen the biggest change. If you think about it, that 2020 draft, Joe didn't have the keys yet, and Adam Gase was still there. He was still trying to build a team that was designed for that. Look at these last two drafts, man. I've said it. These last two drafts, I really do think they have the potential to go down as two of the greatest consecutive back-to-back drafts in NFL history.
The Jets don't have great back-to-back drafts if you look at their history.
Yeah, the talent is insane in these last two drafts. Just insanity.
Yeah, the Jets will have one good draft, but then stink for 3 or 4 years at the draft. If you go back through their history, and I've researched like some of these drafts to figure out what some of the best draft years were, but it never happens back to back for the Jets. And you make it, and that's such a good point that you made. If you put 2 years together, now you are really doing it. I mean, if Zach is just a top 10 quarterback, just top 10. And you combine that with everything else from that class for the way that looked. And yes, some guys got cut. You know what? When you have that many picks, guys are going to get cut. Not every draft pick from a draft class is going to work out. But you want to have 3 or 4 foundational players, 1 or 2 role players. If you do that in a draft, when you have the type of capital that we've had, you've done it. You've really done it. And then when other players start to see the pieces come together, the team starts to learn to be competitive. Then they start to win those close games that we talked about with the Cynthia predictions. That's when they start gathering interest. That's when the attention comes. That's when players tell their agents, you know what? I want to go play on this team. They're up and coming. I want to be a Jet now. And players like Jordan Whitehead are already Jets because of Robert Saleh. That gives me hope. He said that. Why'd you want to become a Jet? Why'd you leave a team that won a Super Bowl? And you went to the Jets. Why? Robert Saleh. That was what he said.
Right, man. You're right. And it's not
that
just
means
him.
Something.
It's a big deal. You're right. Excuse me. And the biggest part of that is the culture change, right? And that's what it was. When Joe Douglas started this, that's what it was. It was a culture change, bringing in the right people in the right places, the right coaching. I knew everyone was saying, him and Adam Gase's fates were intertwined. I knew that wasn't the case. It was, again, him being brought in where Gase was this unheralded king of the Jets. Like he became Bill Belichick, where he's like GM and head coach. He got the accolade with none of the reason to earn it. Didn't deserve it whatsoever, but gets it. Of course, Joe's going to work with him and come in. But as we saw, brings in Saleh, and we saw over these last 2 years, you're right, not just him, and so many players have been coming to the Jets, consistently reiterating the same thing, that they're either coming because of Robert Saleh or because of what he's building here, because of the culture that he's instilling. It really is a real impressive thing.
It is, and now it's time for that to translate into wins. We tried to build, but then we built again, and then we built again this offseason. It has to start translating into wins. I'm not even asking for a winning season, but I'm asking for competitive football, at least out of the 17 games, at least 14 games. Keep those games close and learn to win a few of them. That will start to get attention. Here's what I'm looking for, because we know the schedule gets easier. But I want people to talk about the first 4 games, the AFC North Gauntlet. I'm not looking at it that way. I'm looking at the first 5. That 5th game is home, Miami. If the Jets are going to have any kind of a season, they have to finally beat Miami again. I'm not even asking for Buffalo. We got to beat Miami, and you got to win a game against New England. I want 3-2 in those first 5 games. Then you have the hard part with Green Bay, Denver, New England, and Buffalo. If they only win one of those games, I'll live with that. Because remember, if you're going to talk playoffs, you got to win your conference games. You need those tiebreakers. That's why these are so important. The easier games are mostly NFC games when you play the NFC North, when you play Seattle. Okay, because we have to go to Seattle towards the end of the year. If they can get into that bye, 4-5, I will have hope that they can have a meaningful season. If they are 5-4 and relatively healthy, I will be over the freaking moon. So, but I think it all starts with that 3-2 or better start, because we're going to know quickly. How often has the season been over by Columbus Day? In the last 6 years, pretty much every single time, and we knew that we couldn't fool ourselves. Like, well, maybe if we win the next 9 games, but Pittsburgh loses 7 of their last 9 if Mason Rudolph doesn't play well. That's the type of scenarios we would have to envision. It's going to take a good start and it coming together well. And what does that come back to? Coaching. We have the same coaching staff that we've had last year. We didn't turn a single coach over that I know of. So this is going to tell us a lot about Robert Saleh, Mike LaFleur, and Jeff Ulbrich. All 3 of them. I want to see a quick start this year. I'm not asking for even a win against Baltimore because I think that's going to be challenging. But you know what? Win 3 of those 5. Start winning those division games. Like Robert Saleh said at the end of the flight series, he talked about how many games in a row we've lost in the division. Lost by 16.6 per game. That has to change. He knows that has to change. He knows what you and I know, what everybody in the chat knows, what the smart Jet fans know. We know you're smart because you care because you're watching these types of shows. You're watching Harrison, you're watching me once in a while, but you're watching these types of shows, and we know what has to change. Winning in September, which we haven't done since Sam Darnold's first game. Winning a division game, which we haven't done since a meaningless Week 17 against Buffalo when they rested half their team. Beat New England, which we haven't done since the Eric Decker walk-off in 2015 when Ryan Fitzpatrick threw the overtime touchdown. All those narratives have to change, and damn it, I want them to change this freaking year.
Amen, brother. Amen. And you're 100% right. Joe Douglas literally, like you said, reiterated that. He said he feels like we're a more talented team than we've ever been, but we have to close the gap in the division. He said this just in his August 31st presser. He said part of playing meaningful games down the stretch is winning games in the division. He said the number one goal of any team is to win their division. So like you said, he gets it. I mean, that's kind of been the whole point here. He gets it. He knows what needs to be done. And we said it. We see, the team has been trending in the right direction. The draft picks have been unbelievable. Free agency has been amazing. We feel like Zach has all this potential. Like you said, we need to see it happen. We need to see it translate to the field with wins. And it really just comes down to, like you said, us Jet fans, we just want to see good football. We want to see really, really good football. We want to be competitive. That's what we're really asking for. We want to win. We want to make the playoffs, but we want to be a competitive team.
We want to have stress again. We want to feel stress.
Exactly.
We want stress back.
Exactly. No, you're right, 100%. We want other teams to be afraid. We want other teams to be, oh no, the Jets are coming. We need to be ready for this team.
I wish we had video of the game when the Jets beat the Titans and just how crazy. There were about 35 of us watching that at AJ Gators in Norfolk. It was a pretty good turnout. And we were like literally on our knees. We had video going of the final play, and we were literally hugging. And I think those of us who stayed, we had 4 or 5 fireball shots each after the game ended. That was just beating Tennessee. That was a regular season overtime win. It was a freaking meaningless game. We knew at the end of the day we weren't going to be that good.
Well, you remember
early October, and we went crazy.
The Browns not that long ago. Remember they were giving free
the
alcohol
Bud Light,
away. Yeah, they were giving free
Bud Light
away
opening up with Baker debut.
Bad.
Oh, it was so embarrassing.
The team is so bad. They're like, we'll give you alcohol if we win.
Well, it's Bud Light, so it's essentially a soda, but that's another story.
That's funny, man. That's funny. But yeah, like you mentioned, it's been awesome. We've been going for about an hour 50, which is awesome. Love it, man. Love it. But we're probably going to start wrapping it up. But we really appreciate you guys being there. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you for being part of the show. Thank you for being part of the Take Flight Spinfire podcast. If you've been here for the whole hour 48 minutes, I truly appreciate you. We really love you. Again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. If you haven't, like I mentioned before, if you could just please subscribe to the channel. If you haven't, it'd be greatly appreciated. But again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Adam, can you let everyone know a quick shout out of where they could find you?
Yes, so you can find my YouTube channel, just like my username, NY Sports Wicker Media. There's the whole story behind the infamous wicker chair from a Mother's Day show I did with Nick Shine, with Tigo, with Jeremy. That began the legend of the wicker chair, so I just decided to incorporate it. In fact, I do the on Sunday. Sometimes I do the Sunday sports sermon, and the thumbnail that I created, you can see the outline of the wicker chair inside this church. It's very subtly incorporated. If you look closely, you can see the wicker chair inside the church.
Oh, that's awesome, bro. Subtlety's the best.
Yeah. Once I figured out the design, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have so much fun with this. And I'm having more and more fun doing the channel. Like I've started to learn about intros, thumbnails. I've got music, change my background. I've been really trying to up it a lot. And I did a video on when the 53-man roster came out last Monday. And it's over 500 views, which I'm just so happy about.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations.
Before that, thank you. I couldn't get before. I was never above like 150, and all of a sudden now it's getting some attention. I don't know how, but I'm very happy about it. So that's where you'll find me. And on Twitter, you could find me. So you'll know me as Watsuke99. You could find me on Twitter at Watsuke WA2K _1999. I'll throw it in the chat real quick, but I talk on the channel. I do talk Jets. I also talk Mets. I talk Rangers, whatever else might be on my mind. Sometimes I'll talk Knicks, or if there's anything that's kind of getting my attention, I'll talk about it. Like, do you remember one example, Andrew Mevis? He was one of the kicking prospects that some people were talking about it. Some Jets fans wanted because of Ryan Revis. He got cut his first week of camp because he hit a sideline reporter who was standing in the corner of the end zone.
This was back what year?
This year.
Oh, it was this year. Why?
That was this year. He got cut like in May because it was one of the kickers.
The name's not ringing a bell. That's surprising. I don't know why.
There was a couple.
Maybe because he was there for so short.
Cade York was one. Yeah, but Andrew
I remember York.
Mevis,
yeah.
And Cade York was the main one from LSU. But this guy Mevis, there was a sideline reporter standing in the corner of the end zone, and the kick was so bad it hit her in the head. They cut him that day, and I had to do a video about it because it just made me laugh.
And he had to probably pay her medical bills too. So
I don't know if he could afford them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, guys, we appreciate you tuning in. Thank you for being here. As you know, I bring you content throughout the week, short videos, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Please check them out. Again, if you could subscribe, be greatly appreciated. Thank you again for being here for the Take Flight Spinfire podcast. We'll see you guys next Monday. We're always here live at 7 p.m. Thank you for being here. Have a great, great rest of your week. And remember, week 1 is coming, man. Week 1 is coming, and I can't wait. This Sunday, we got our first game. It's going to be freaking awesome.
Have a good night, everybody.
Take care, guys.